but I mean, we have that not working. Okay, apologies for that. Yeah, I think, Mr. Similane, if you could go ahead and just run through this, and then we can ask for any points of clarity.
Thanks, Chair. And greetings, Chair, and greetings, honorable members. As you've already mentioned, Chair, it's 3 petitions in all. In no particular order.
Please speak right into the mic, otherwise we're not hearing you clearly. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure. Yes, we went through them. They are all actually important and they all require urgent attention. The way we looked at them, one relates to students, one relates to service delivery in the community, and the other relates to demarcation issues, again, in a rural community in the Eastern Cape. The first one is on the dental students from CPUT. It's an urgent issue because every day, every week, and every month that is lost, I mean, in terms of academic issues, is never recovered. So maybe it is one that the committee may want to probably first give attention to. Just to okay, it's the author of the petition is Ms. Speaker, Mbalenhle Speaker, on behalf of CPUT students from the dental faculty. The issue is a year long. It starts on May 25 last year, whereby the students were removed from the Tygerberg Hospital. I mean, with the assurance that the training facility will be ready soon. Well, soon was never soon. I mean, time passed by, the building remained incomplete, then students remained without training facilities, proper training facilities, so to say. Despite this, management obviously failed to implement a timely resolution. Instead, they opted to introduce online learning. That was for approximately 3 months, which means there was no practical if it's online. And then in 2025, again later in the year, the students were relocated temporarily to the Belleville campus without, again, the approval of the SADTC, South African Dental Council, Technicians Council, I'm sorry. Those facilities in Belleville were also unsuitable, and they actually caused some threats and safety issues and health issues as well, due to lack of ventilation and some equipment not being up to standard. Following an inspection by the SADTC, then it was confirmed that it's not fit for human use. And then again, later in 2025, because of all the issues I've already highlighted, so the academic year could not be completed, and students left for the December break, end of the year, without finishing their studies, but with assurances from CPUT that the new building will be ready when they return in 2026. Unfortunately, when they returned, the same issues were still there. Nothing was fixed. But also, due to that, the students also lost funding, the NSFAS funding. Although there were promises by the institution that they'll be provided with allowances. It was random, ad hoc, it was never reliable, it was never consistent. Furthermore, the students were required to sign a proposed plan that ultimately failed again in terms of how the studies were gonna be completed. Another allegation is basically that the university doesn't communicate properly with the students. So it remains inconsistent, it's incomplete, they never know what is happening when. And then there is also that issue, because of all those issues, then the students opted to bring in the SRC, both the central SRC and the local SRC, and other supporting structures, and then that actually culminated in a strike, peaceful strike, according to the petition. So a memorandum was submitted to the VC, and he never actually accepted their demands. In fact, during those engagements, they alleged that he made some statements that, especially on the safety issues, he made some statements that robberies are normal on campus. Well, yeah. And then, but yeah, we overall, basically, what we picked up from the petitioner was this is not a once-off relocation issue. It seems like there is a whole lot of issues that actually were prolonged and they intersected and became a big issue where we are now. In terms of the overview of the petition, I think as I've already touched some, it's basically a summary of the allegations that were made. It's disruptions, and then it's failure to make proper arrangements as a remedy. It's also, which led then, as I've already mentioned, to failure to complete the academic year in 2025, which obviously means they can't graduate and they can't move to the workplace. But also, it's basically a big issue around funding, financial hardship, because most of the students are relying on NSFAS. And then there is also that issue of basically, we think it's governance issues within the institution, it's lack of infrastructure within the institution, it's lack of seriousness to when it comes to student welfare. It's also an issue of not sticking to regulatory prescripts within the institution as well. Going down to the issue of, with your permission, Chair, I may want to skip 2.2, which talks to accreditation non-compliance. And unless you insist, I go through that one. But I would actually want to go to 2.3 on facilities and infrastructure. Infrastructure is a big issue that started the whole thing. The moving from here to another institution or another facility that also turns out to be not up to standard. Belleville facilities are unsuitable. Ventilation is not adequate. Equipment is not available, or rather not sufficient. And the issues that I've already mentioned of safety, which was said to be apparently normal in campuses. So, end of the day, a year goes by, students do not finish. I will skip some of the issues that I think I've already mentioned. Which other point will be, let me skip to the financial impact. Majority of the students are on NSFAS. Last year meant they lost funding, and those who continue to get, it was not clear who's getting, who's not getting, and when are they getting or not getting, and how much they are getting or not getting. For final year students, it was even worse because they had to graduate and proceed to the place of to the workplace if they get jobs, but they couldn't. All these issues, Chair and members, point to the importance, I will say, of the petition for these students. Key stakeholders that we picked up from the original petition, it's UCT, the educational institution itself. We've listed the roles and responsibilities that they are supposed to play, including delivering quality education, timeliness as well, to ensure that students are placed in clinical environment for practice, and also to administer final practical examinations, to escalate disputes if there are any disputes with students. It does appear none was done or not much was done, yeah. There are a number of claims that have already been made, as already mentioned. There's claims that the program remains accredited despite the fact that SADTC is suspended. It came across that there was actually a filed application in Gauteng against the SADTC. It came out that there was some engagement since 2019 without any resolutions as well. And then ultimately, it seems like there are no longer any new student intakes until a resolution has been made.
Mr. Similane, please put your mic closer to your mouth.
Or to the
You're
mics.
Fading away again.
Oh, okay, sorry for that. And then there is the SADTC, South African Dental Technicians Council. It's a major stakeholder. It keeps on being referred. At some point in time, they were actually bypassed when the students were relocated. So we identified them as a key stakeholder as well. Amongst other things, actually, they are regulators. They accredit the programs, the dental programs at the university. There is also the Department of Higher Education. Obviously, since it's CPTU that is involved, they've got their own responsibilities as well. Since it's a dental program, the Department of Health as well is a major stakeholder. Also, the Council on Higher Education, CHE, they emerged earlier on when there were issues of suspensions of the SADTC. So they become a major stakeholder as well. The students are funded by NSFAS, so NSFAS is another important stakeholder as well. And then the partner institutions like Tigerberg Hospital as well. The relief that is being sought by the petitioners, they are requesting the committee to intervene to make sure that there is an immediate restoration of a fully accredited, a safe and a compliant training facility for dental technology programs at CPUT in line with the SADTC requirements. They further request the committee to push for an urgent implementation of a structured academic recovery plan that will enable all affected students to complete the outstanding coursework and the clinical requirements without further delay and without any penalties, be they financial or academic. They also request that the committee facilitate a formal engagement between CPUT as a stakeholder, SADTC as a stakeholder, NSFAS as a stakeholder, and the Department of Higher Education to secure the protection for professional registration and the reinstatement of extension of the funding, NSFAS funding. They also call for an independent investigation into the planning, the governance, and the decision-making failures that led to the disruption, with appropriate accountability measures being implemented. Finally, they are seeking that there must be assurances of transparent communication, meaningful student representation in all ongoing decision-making processes, and the introduction of long-term safeguards, including infrastructure compliance and contingency planning to prevent the recurrence of similar disruptions and to protect the academic and professional futures of all affected students. I had already mentioned earlier that it does seem to also lean towards governance issues, which is what the petitioners are explicitly stating as one of their last requirements. Lastly, Chair and members on this petition, the recommendations will be that the committee undertake an immediate oversight of the situation by first initiating a thorough investigation into the circumstances that led to the disruption in the first place, particularly the decision to remove the students from Tiger Park without a compliant alternative place, because that's where the problem started. Everything else followed there. So might be important for the committee. I think, Chair, you've already mentioned that one of the ways will be to write to all stakeholders. I think that will be the first form of the first process of the investigation. We also recommend that the committee should facilitate urgent engagement between CPUT, the institution, and the affected students, NSFAS, and the SATTC, and the Department of Education to develop a coordinated and time-bound recovery plan. Because as you mentioned earlier, every day, every week that is lost, it cannot be recovered for those students. So it becomes urgent in that sense. It is further recommended that the committee must require CPUT to restore accredited and safe training facilities without delay, while ensuring that the students' academic progression and eligibility for professional registration are protected through formal engagements with all the already stated regulatory bodies. In addition, the committee should advocate financial relief measures, including the continuation or reinstatement of NSFAS funding and institutional support for affected with this one, I don't think the committee exactly has the powers to instruct NSFAS to release or avail the funding or what, but we can make a recommendation to them. Also, I'm not exactly sure at what point will this take place, given that some of them are not registered at the moment. So there are issues actually that needs to be dealt with before it even reaches the next first part of things. Also, we recommend that to ensure accountability and transparency, CPUT should be required to provide regular progress reports, while an independent review process assess governance, planning, and compliance failures. Finally, the committee should also promote the inclusion of student representatives in all resolution processes and consider broader sectoral recommendations to prevent similar disruptions. Again, this recommendation arose because, according to the petitioners, some of the issues are a result of poor communication or them being excluded from decision making as well. And then the last recommendation will be the committee to engage CPUT that they must conclude an agreement or a memorandum of understanding with all other institutions that are offering the same or similar programs to accommodate affected students for practical training. But this one again is probably, if everything else fails and more time is being lost for the students, then it is one angle that could be pursued. The committee has yet to consider the content of the petition. So, Chair, I will be guided by you whether members will probably want to engage this one, or I should to the next and the next and the week.
I think let us discuss this one first. Anyone have questions they'd like to put to Mr. Simelane? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. If I capture correctly, is that in this instance, or in this occasion, the first or the point of departure could be that first the chairperson writes to the students and assure them that we will take a full inquiry by ourselves. And then it's also recommended that we go on a site visit, or perhaps to the university. Now, I want to understand in this situation, if we are saying we are going to undertake ourselves a site visit, is it not going to cause any conflict? Because remember, there are student representatives, there's also the university who's, in this whole situation, I would believe that the students also have written to the university to indicate their grievances. They're coming to us because they are now in a dilemma and in a situation where they're not finding joy from the university. I just want maybe legal advice or Parliament to just advise properly on how we should approach this so that we are not in conflict with the universities. You know, universities are independent in their nature. How then should we approach this? Although I do perhaps suggest that perhaps our first point of departure would be to say the students must at least come to Parliament, and because if they're in Cape Town, come to Parliament, to the committee, and we understand, we meet with them first, and then take it from there. Writing to the students, I think the chair should also write to the institutions, and indicate that Parliament has now embarked on a process that we are following based on the petition that has been received. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to fill you in, as we receive a petition, we immediately write to the petitioner saying, we've received this, it will be dealt with by the committee. Now that let's start with this one has been presented to us. I think the first thing we have to do is write to each of the role players. It would be Tygerberg Hospital. We need an explanation as to why they were moved from there in the first place. And then the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, National Student Financial Aid Scheme, the Dental Technicians Council, and the Department of Higher Education and Training. Now, the one thing that caught my eye was that they've gone to court. They filed an application in the Gauteng High Court against the South African dental technicians. So we need to know the status of that, because if it's a court case, we have a problem. I think we're then excluded until that is resolved. So I think we do need an update on that. But I agree absolutely. I don't think it would help. I mean, I think the piece sent to us, the petition, is very thorough by the students. And that is absolutely their perspective. But we do need the others to give inputs like this. I mean, my initial reaction is, but have they failed the students? And it looks quite dramatic. But we need to hear the other side of the story before. And then we have two options. If we go there to have a look, I'm not sure what we're looking at, but the alternative is to bring the head of the students here and the heads of these various bodies and thrash it out in this room. So that's the status I see us at. But we need clarity on where this court case is, because if there's a court case, we can do nothing. Mr. Similani, have you had a similar situation where the court case is involved?
No, Chair, we haven't, but also I will concur with you that in terms of the parliamentary petition rules, any matter should not be before any court if we are going to deal with that. So maybe we will have to follow up, like you say, and just get clarity on that one.
Honorable Lowe.
Because also there is a possibility that it may not even be the student themselves who actually instituted the court action. It might be the SADTC against someone else. So we will clarify that one. If it's not the students, then there won't be a problem.
No, thanks very much, Chair. I want to echo the same sentiments on Honorable Makubela could have said, to say, one, let's acknowledge the fact that we got the petition as a committee, And then two, because we are working on an intergovernmental related space, already when you read on the background of the petition, there was commitment, there was money. Now, money says Section 55, please give us any other extension to play our oversight role as Parliament. Now, how do we play our oversight role? I propose that we also write to DHEAD, we write to CPUT, we gather information of documentation, because if there was budget implementation, let's first gather documentation, and then as we go do oversight and want to get to the interactive part where the students would have had all the relevant documentation, because we must be finished with such. One, the budget; two, the commitment, when was it the financial year, what happened to the decision, because when we remove students, want an impression that you are going to give effect of them to be assisted with regard to that. Let's get to the relevant documentation, what informed the budget, and then as we sit down and want to call our people, so we should call them based on the fact that we have looked onto the budget, we know who's the person who was supposed to execute and not could have delayed that. And I don't want us to give more effect to universities to say they've got a jurisdictional part of autonomous. We give them money and they are part of the DHEAD, and if DHEAD is part of them, they must play part of the role. If there's misconceptions or any other misconduct in terms of the financials as to the PFMA, we've got duty to play our role and take oversight. So I'm saying, firstly, let's gather information, gather to get to know what has been, what informed the delay or what has happened. It might be that there's corruption. It might be that people have chowed money or shifted money, deviated it to the variables that is not accepted, but then we can discover. Then from there, we can engage DHEAD. DHEAD that is responsibility to call CPUT and come and tell us what are the issues. Going to the students, we'll have concrete background and information to give directive as a committee, and then we'll make recommendations as per the oversight that we want to play. Thanks.
Thank you, I agree absolutely. The more information we can gather from all of the, and I think what we can do is trawl through the document and say, they're accused of this and this and this, and you know, NSFAS won't pull funds unless they realize that the teaching has stopped, because then there's nothing to pay for, and the students have been left high and dry. So each of the entities has to explain their role, where the money is, why it was stopped, and it was stopped because of the University of Technology, I think. That's what it seems to be, because of they've floundered in terms of the entire process, frankly. So if we get all of that information, as you've suggested, by writing to all of the role players, then we can sit down and say, okay, actually the university says they've done this and this and this, but the students disagree, and maybe, as they said, it might be a whole communication issue, lack thereof. But first and foremost, I think we have to find out about the court case. So I agree absolutely. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I must also apologize for missing some meetings, and so some of my intervention might be lagging somewhere. Chair, my first attitude is that we seem to be very calm on an emergency. These students already lost a year. This petition has come before us in March. That's when they submitted it, and we are now in June. So, and it is clear they are coming before Parliament because of a desperate situation. We must indeed follow a due process and so on, but some who might be registered but now have a situation of funding, it means they are starving. So we have an emergency situation in our hands, Chair. So I am suggesting that the first thing we do is to find out if there are students who are registered and are having this problem with NSFAS. And then we as a committee write to NSFAS and say we are seized with this matter. We will follow a due process, but in the interim, whilst we're dealing with this matter, can you provide some relief? Because my concern is that students are starving as we speak. So maybe that intervention could provide an interim relief, and then we follow this complicated process of listening to the other side of the story and so on. Thanks.
Thank you for that input, and I I think it is an emergency. Unfortunately, with the establishment of the committee, we first had to learn about the committee, which we did a workshop on, and we received the research documents literally a few days ago, the last one yesterday. So now we're on it. And I'm quite happy to write to the financial aid scheme, whether they are in a position or have the right to offer relief to the students, I don't know, but we can certainly give it a try in lieu of sorting this whole mess out. But I think it is urgent, and these bodies will be written to as soon as possible, by tomorrow, and then we'll give them a deadline. We want your response by Monday next week, whatever date it is, and then we need to meet again. Obviously, we'll circulate the answers to everybody in the room, and then we must say, right, this is the situation. Now, do we do oversight there, or do we bring them here? And we can bring head of the students, head of each of the entities, and we thrash it out. Because the students have been, no, I mustn't prejudge. It seems to me the students have been failed miserably. I might be wrong, so we'll have to wait till we hear from them. But I think it's probably a good idea. Let's write in the financial aid scheme and say, right, are you in a position, are you able to release funds for these students? There are 43, 45 of them. So I agree. Honourable Bowman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so going through this, obviously, we are emotionally charged by what has come here. But if we go back to basics to understand, number one, we can't be doing anything if this thing is sub judice. We cannot touch it. So we can write to anybody if it is sitting in the court, and like what we discussed now earlier is that we don't know if it was the students that instituted the legal action or if it was one of the organizations that are involved here. So I think we need to get a clear indication very quickly as to where it is. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we've got one side of the story here. So I'm with my colleague here in terms of the fact that this is urgent. Like I always say and joke, I own a student, I own a 20-year-old, I know what they're going through. But we also need to understand what the other side of the story is. And we can't base our findings on emotion at this point in time. I think we need to just get the hard, cold facts and then work substantially with the information at hand. And if it is that there is mediation or something that is needed, yes, we bring them in here and we thrash it out. Because communication breaks down, we all know. People stop talking or people stop listening. And then it's a no-go. But for me, personally, I like what the recommendations are in terms of the researchers. For me, it is just to close off the legal issue and then just get everybody's input as soon as possible with timelines, obviously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Mr. Similani, have you got any further input?
No, Chair. I captured all the inputs from members. We will try to see how we integrate them into the inputs, the recommendations we had already made.
Please remember you have to speak into the mic because we don't hear a word you say. Okay,
Apologies.
so I think if we're agreed, we will fire off the letters as soon as possible. First of all, to establish the status of the court case, and then to explain, I want to know why they were removed from the Tygerberg Hospital, which seemed the ideal place for them to be as students. So it has to start right there. That seems to be the catalyst of what has followed. So that would be the process. So if everyone's in agreement with that, I think we can move on. We happy? Could we then see the next one, the next petition, please? I believe that is the demarcation one, yeah? Mr. Similani, sorry? Is it the other one? Okay, well then we'll move down to that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members.
If you would go ahead and do the presentation.
This
Thank you.
one is from the community whose name I can't pronounce properly. So yeah, it's a tongue twister. So, but basically the petitioner here is Mr.
It's the Kumkani Mhlondlo local municipality demarcation. Is that what we're looking at, or the Mr.
No.
Saul? Refer Sonderend. Okay, we're on to.
Is the referral one, yeah. I can pronounce Mhlondlo, Chair, so I'm good with that one. So the petitioner here is Mr. Hendrik Souls. It's a straightforward service delivery petition of failure of service delivery. The town itself falls under the Tivaterskloof municipality in the Western Cape. Failure to implement a planned netball court project, the demolition of a pavilion without any replacement, an unsafe waste management practice that is way close to residential areas and a clinic, and the absence of adequate indoor multi-sport facilities, again, relates to the netball court project, but it's actually broader than that. There have been several attempts to engage the Department of Sports and Recreation and other stakeholders without any meaningful response or whatsoever. I'm not sure if you would want me to get to the background of the municipality or just actually skip to the issues themselves, Chair, or 2.1.
Yeah, I think, look, doing a quick look through, I think we must understand that it's a tiny local municipality they don't have sufficient funded budget. They're in severe financial crisis, I think is the answer to all of that. And they're under some sort of funding plan by the province treasury. So they have huge issues. So I think let's leave that and move on.
Okay, noted, Chair. Safe to say also, as you've already said, it's a small village, like roughly kind of town, 140 kilometers or so outside of Cape Town. The issue of the pavilion, both Caledon as well as Riviersonderstrand, have been inspected by a structural engineer, and this one specifically was found to be not safe for spectators. The repair cost amounted to 800,000 rand. The Caledon one was found to be okay, no problems there. Then, because it was unsafe, there had to be a replacement and it had to be prioritized. And that is where our problems are at the moment. There are not enough facilities, sporting facilities generally, soccer, cricket, netball. As Chair already mentioned, huge money issues here. As a result, no funding that is required to construct any new facility, especially because there are also demands for housing and other infrastructure issues. There is a question of vandalism and theft to other sports facilities, which then actually places a lot of pressure on the limited budget that we've already referred to. And then the budget, that little budget that is available and intended for maintenance gets used somewhere else. And then there are also other sporting courts that are not affiliated with a sport or a sports body or a sport federation, but also use the same facilities, again putting a lot of pressure. With regards to the water treatment and sewage thing, again, it's a big issue in a small municipality without much funding. Wastewater treatment works across, having experienced recurring failures, there is poor effluent compliance, there is inadequate treatment outcomes over a sustained period, And then where it does work, it is still not consistent. It doesn't meet the required standards as well. And then there's massive consequences that go beyond just technical non-compliance. There is an issue of direct health risks now because of rivers that are there. And also, I mean, those downstream users, of course, agriculture and the whole ecosystem integrity is actually compromised. Specifically in refers on residents have reported poor drinking water quality, and then the town itself is also linked to wide wastewater treatment weaknesses across so apparently the water is foul smelling, it's discolored, and it's just unsafe for domestic use. So the issue here is that this water must be treated urgently to avoid environmental health and other issues. I will skip this page and then go to, besides this municipality, there are others like Caledon, Greyton, Henan, and all sort of other municipalities actually that are kind of facing similar issues. But let me just skip to the key stakeholders. It's the petitioners, which is basically the community represented by Mr. Souls. And then there is the municipal manager. He's got responsibilities that we listed on the right. And then there is also the municipal council itself. Again, it has its own responsibilities listed on the right, including passing budget allocation. And then there is the Department of Water and Sanitation, which is actually responsible for tracking sewage treatment failures and also enforcing national drinking water standards, amongst other things. Then there is the Sports and Recreation South Africa, which is, remember, this petition relates to failure to deliver sports infrastructure in particular, although there are other issues involved. They've got responsibility as well, including providing funds for upgrading or creating multi-purpose sports facilities, specifically in disadvantaged areas. Then there is the Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture, the provincial body that is responsible for provincial oversight of all sports development, amongst other issues. Then there is provincial and national treasury. Again, we put it up there just for discussion purposes. The committee will decide whether they qualify as to be listed as stakeholders in this petition, but their responsibility, amongst other things, obvious, is to ensure that there is lawful budget implementation for sports facilities, including the other three that we listed above. The petitioners are actually requesting the committee to intervene to its oversight function by directing appropriate remedial action to address the concerns that are raised by this petition, the failure of dealing with the issues that we've already listed. This includes steps to improve access to inter and multi-sport facilities for young people in the community. They are also seeking the committee's help to ensure that concerns relating to waste management practices near their areas and near community facilities like the clinic we mentioned above are urgently examined and addressed by relevant authorities. They also are requesting the committee's intervention to force or rather require the municipality and relevant provincial departments to engage meaningfully with the petitioner and affected community members on the actions that needs to be taken and the timelines for the implementation of those actions, and to also monitor the response of the responsible institutions to ensure accountability in respect of the matters raised. Chair and members, given the issues that were raised in the petition, it is recommended that the committee considers these actions. It's similar to what was discussed in the previous petition. One, invite all relevant stakeholders as we've already listed above, including the petitioner himself, the municipality, the department that's responsible, that is the sports department, and also any other affected department to appear before the committee to account for the issues raised and to outline remedial actions. We also recommend that an oversight is actually taken to the community, what you normally call what? Inspection in loco? Yes, I think that's the term. To the community. If necessary, and it does appear that it might actually be necessary, just to assess the condition of the sports facilities and to also assess the related delivery concerns firsthand, and to also engage directly with the affected community members and the officials. We also recommend that this committee must engage, or rather interact with the municipality, and require that all departments must provide a time-bound action plan indicating the interventions that they are going to implement, if any, and the responsible officials who will be responsible for what, when, and the expected dates for each commitment that they are going to be making. We also recommend that the committee must request a regular periodic progress report from those responsible for implementation, so that we can be able to monitor any progress and implementation and determine whether there is further intervention that's required from Parliament. We also recommend that this committee must consider referring any matters that are falling outside the immediate mandate of this committee to the appropriate oversight structures or departments, while ensuring that the petitioner is kept updated on the steps that are being taken and the outcomes that have already been achieved. There could be more, but we will take recommendations from members as well and see how we update the document. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions, Honourable Bowman?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, yeah, so for me, what stands out specifically is that sporting facilities are very important. But what stands out even more to me is the water quality and the sanitation management. I think for any town to thrive, that those need to be addressed ASAP. I also have noticed that in 2011, the census for, what is this place called again? Yes, that place, was 5,245 people. So we are looking at a substantially small town in a myriad of other small towns that make up this municipality. So I think for me, it would be exactly, again, I again concur with the recommendations by the researcher. I do think that for me that the priority here should be the service delivery, the water, the sanitation. But without that, we've got illnesses, we just can't thrive as a town. And then obviously the nice to haves, but then also, I mean, there has been recommendation from a national as well as a provincial sporting, the Sport and Recreation South Africa, as well as the Western Cape Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture, that they could maybe contribute. But also at the same time, you know, these things, you've got national companies that get involved in this type of thing in the smaller towns. I mean, we could always, the whole of society approach and bring in private sector to try and facilitate the rebuilding of the netball courts and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think priority is the water and sanitation for me. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honourable.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I want to also agree that we go with the recommendations because one, municipalities are quite complicated because before that we are going to discuss, I'm going to propose that maybe we should adapt a strategy to say prior to engagement, we must have relevant documentations. In a municipality, you adopt your IDP.
Relevant what?
I was saying municipalities, they normally deals with your IDPs, they adapt budgets. And then here in this situation, in my analysis, the Department of Sports Arts and Culture has a jurisdiction to support provincial departments and locals because there are jurisdictional ways of dealing with issues. So what the recommendations, they are fine. But I propose we garner the documentation that are relevant for us to check was there any budgeting in the financial years of of these particular areas as a matter of importance, so that when we call these municipal stakeholders to come and appear in front of us, we are able to be empowered as to say, why didn't you implement or do as expected? Because you budgeted in this particular financial year, you shifted in this financial year. And when we're empowered, I want to conquer that we move because of, we might call them, this one might say it's not my competency, the local are supposed to do this one is going to do this, but it's better that we garner information than we call them and we ask them, because we could have had reports, your annual reports, and then we could have get something to guide, because I don't want our committee as a result to subpoena or call in or summon people based when we don't have much more information, but we are much more content as to how government works from local level, from provincial and from national. So if we're empowered, we're able to hold them accountable. And if indeed we find out that these things were budgeted for, we are therefore able to give directive as to what should happen. But I want to propose that get information, then we move forward with the recommendations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree absolutely. We need to have the facts before we can do the interviews, and it may well be that there's a plan to start building a stadium next week, in which case if we start ranting on about no stadium, we look like utter idiots. So we do need all the facts on the table first. I agree absolutely. Honourable Peterson.
No, thank you, Chair. I am covered by Honourable Law. I also wanted to say, what's clear is that the community feels unheard, right? But before we do anything, I think it's important that we get also the documentation before we call the relevant stakeholders to come and tell us what steps have been taken for them to address this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Agreed. That's it. So I think the decision here is, again, we write to all stakeholders, role players, asking for input in relation to every matter detailed, and they fall under different entities. And then we get the responses, then we take a decision. And we say, hang on, this has already been dealt with, this is not being dealt with, we need to focus on this and that and the next thing. So we're agreed with that, yes? Shall we move on to the last petition, please, Mr. Simelane?
Thank you, Chair. The last petition relates to border demarcations. And again, we felt it's quite urgent because it's an election year, local government election year. I'm not sure if in the interest of time, Chair, you will still want me to go to the introductions or just go to the specific issues and the recommendations we made.
I think if we're agreed, we can go to the specifics.
To the specifics.
Because that's a background history thereof. Sorry.
It's there, yes.
Of what the petition is all about, so that if we can simply just go to the recommendations and speak to them.
I agree, thank you. Anyone have a problem with, thank you. Anyone have a problem with us going to the, okay, Mr. Simelane, off you go, thank you.
Oh, okay, thanks, Chair. Maybe just before I go to the recommendations, I can just list the stakeholders that we picked up. It's the community members of Qumbu. That's where the petition comes from. So there is the MDB, the Municipal Demarcation Board, involved as a stakeholder. There is the Kumkani Mhlonhlo local municipality, it's involved as well. Then it's a rural municipality, so there is a traditional leadership issue, traditional councils are stakeholders. And then there is Kokta as well involved. There is OR Tambo District Municipality as a stakeholder, and just the general community. So just highlighting this so that when we get to the recommendations, we know who we are dealing with. But the relief that the petitioners are seeking is that we must intervene to investigate the consultation process and how the boundary adjustments were handled, and if there were any administrative irregularities associated with the municipality certification of the demarcation process. That is where the source of contention is. Given that, we recommend that the committee must adopt a structured oversight approach to determine whether the ward delimitation process was or did comply with the applicable legal and procedural requirements. First and foremost, we shall convene a formal hearing at which the petitioners themselves and all the stakeholders that I highlighted just now are actually invited to make submissions before us and respond to the questions that have been raised by the petition. And such a hearing would actually assist us to test the accuracy of the allegations and also to establish the sequence of events that took place and whether there was any meaningful public participation or not before the certification was given. In preparation for the hearing, we would obviously request that all relevant documentary records, including notices of consultation meetings, attendance registers, minutes, written representations, were received from the affected communities, and also if they did receive the maps that were reflecting the maps that reflect the old actually demarcation and the new demarcation or the revised demarcation. Is there any documentation that relates to that, and any certifications and any correspondence that was submitted to the MDB? We think if we could get all those documentations just before the inquiry, it will help us. Where am I? This will also enable us as a committee to determine whether the process did comply with the principles of transparency and whether there was administrative fairness, and actually whether participatory democracy was undermined or was trampled upon, so to say. If the evidence shows that there are procedural shortcomings, or there were shortcuts here and there, misrepresentations here and there, specifically in terms of certification of the process, then the committee must consider recommending that the responsible authorities review the steps that were impugned and then provide remedial engagement with the affected committees, and then request them to report back to us within a specified period on the corrective measures that will be taken. We, as a committee, we may also request a legal and procedural briefing from the MDB itself on the statutory criteria governing what limitation, including the voter parity, the avoidance of splitting communities, the accessibility of voting arrangements, and the extent of municipal responsibility in facilitating public participation. This in particular is actually contained in the section number 3 that talks to the legal framework that we included in the analysis. So, but also This again will assist the committee to distinguish between lawful technical adjustments and action that may have actually compromised the rights and the legitimate expectations of the affected residents. Considering the potential implications for democratic representation and public confidence in local government, it is further recommended that the committee monitor implementation of any undertakings arising from the hearing, and when necessary, we schedule a follow-up engagement to ensure accountability and closure of the petitioners. Again, these are not exhaustive recommendations. We are ready to include whatever members will suggest that needs to be taken as well. Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Thank you,
members.
Mr. Similani. Just something I wondered, have I perhaps missed it? I've been through the demarcation process, I'm sure we all have numerous times. As I recall, there is a deadline by which one must put in objections, changes, even suggesting that the border should change in a certain way. And there's no reference here to the community having done that. So did I miss it? Is there any reference at all in that process? It's very awkward if they were offered the opportunity to give input and they didn't meet the deadline. So that's just something that came to mind.
It does appear, Chair, that there was a deadline and it came and went, but in all the chronological processes that took place, the residents are saying they were never part of the process.
Okay.
And
I also picked
think
that up.
that
Okay.
is the source of the whole dispute around this
Okay.
thing. Yes.
Honorable Bowman?
Yes, I was going to say that. So obviously, the deadlines were between April and June last year, with the final, well, the second draft being issued in September, with a 14-day for objections, and then the 10th of December, handed the final ward boundaries to the IEC with promulgation on the 15th. But if we look at this, I don't know the page number, they basically said that they were not, no resident of that area was informed of the public participation meeting. So obviously the concerns are that we are quite, I mean, we've got 5 months till elections. I think at this point in time is to try and establish whether there was any form of public participation. You know, who is responsible? Is it the IEC? Is it the community participation of the local government in the area? But I think ultimately, again, we're talking about the second case now, where communities just not feeling that they're being heard, they're not being included, which is a massive issue in terms of what is required. So I again do concur, with the recommendations, but I think this one needs to move very quickly. Otherwise, we also potentially have an issue on election day with an entire community who feel that they've been disenfranchised. Thank you very much, Chair.
Any other questions? No. I think we absolutely have to establish, we need them to give us proof that you advertised, that you told the community, etc., everything in relation to the demarcation, because they have their deadlines, etc. If it's found that they did not do that, we have to tell them to go back to the drawing board. You can't take unilateral decisions without the community being involved. I agree. So that's where we sit with this one. Again, letters written calling for urgent responses because of the deadlines of the election, and we take it from there. Agreed. So we're again in an information gathering process. Obviously, we will tell each of the petitioners that we've discussed this evening. Each of them will be told, we have met, we've discussed your issues, we're now looking for further information. In this instance, we would need to establish from the community itself if they in any way put in an objection, because that would be part of the process. So that's another letter that would need to be written. Is there anything further that you want to add? Honourable.
I wanted to re-emphasize in terms of the legal opinion to further advise us because it will proper give us context on how to deal with such so that it can further assist us. Thanks.
Quite right, quite right. We need to know, once the demarcation has been ratified and it's out there and published and approved, is there any possibility they can go back and do a redo? Otherwise, we're just smoking our socks here. I mean, we need to know what our rights are. So you're quite right, and we'd have to obtain a legal opinion, and I'll be discussing with Mr. Manenje how we go about doing that. I'm sure there's a person in Parliament who could give us that sort of opinion, which we would need. So I agree absolutely. Is there anything else anyone wishes to add? Okay, I think that's the way forward. We've agreed that the slew of letters need to be written urgently. I understand this, the dental student matters urgent, the boundary matters urgent. We've got deadlines looming, really. And so all of this has to be done as soon as possible, which Portia and I will sit and do, and get them all off as soon as possible. And the moment responses start coming back, then we'll circulate them and we'll have to meet again to discuss that. There's no point in meeting until we get the responses from the relevant stakeholders. Are we happy with that? I mean, otherwise, what are we going to do? There's nothing further to discuss until we get the responses. Honourable Bowman?
I'm just thinking in terms of practicality. Is there any possibility to potentially look at the recommendations that we have around Robin, and if we're in agreement? And the reason I'm asking that is that it's very difficult to come here and sit here with one part of the information. Is there any possibility that maybe we could say have an online, say this is what the recommendations are, do we concur, and then get cracking on with asking the rest of the bodies for that information?
Everything we do will be circulated. And everything that is requested will be circulated, every response will be circulated. So we'll keep everybody on board. If we can meet online, our unfortunate situation is nobody wants to meet on a Friday. That's the only day that's available. Yes, look, nobody wants to. We took the votes. However, the questions sessions are lasting, it seems to me, longer and longer and longer. And that gives us a problem. If we have to then meet online, it means you must now rush to an office or wherever, or sit in a bus and try and make sense of what we're talking about. I don't know that that's going to work either. But we'll feel our way and we'll become as effective as we can. So what we'll do is we'll start with compiling the letters for the relevant bodies in all three cases and ask for urgent responses. But we do need a legal opinion on that one, and we need a legal opinion or the like in terms of the students who've gone to court, or whoever has gone to court. As Honourable Bowman said, it doesn't clarify who's gone to court. It may well be the students have taken somebody to court or not. So we need to establish that. So there's a lot of fact-finding still to do before we can move forward. But certainly the time is ticking for the students, for the boundaries, and of course water is an issue. So all of them are frankly equally urgent. So that's the plan. Has anyone got anything to add to that? Are we happy? Mr. Similani, are you satisfied with the process?
Yes, Chair, I am satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think we've done what we needed to do. And then, as I say, as we write through and we send through everything, then you'll all be copied so we all know what's going on as it happens. You're happy? Thank you. Okay? Thank you very much, and please take dinner with you. Otherwise, it's going to sit here in a box. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I suggest you keep these packs of information, documents, because when we come back to discuss them, you'll need them again. So just keep them handy and a file, and we'll utilize them each time we discuss each of the petitions. Thank you.